Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show.
He said he gon' huff and puff and blow my mind up. You meet an island girl, she might Jxxiii wind up.
Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show. I'd like to thank Jxxiii for the intro music. You can find a link to her music in the show description. My guest today is Bret Ridgway. Bret Ridgway is a 25-year veteran of the speaking industry. He got a start way back in 1999 when he was asked to manage the back sales table at an internet marketing conference. This led to a side business where over the course of the next 15 years, he managed the sales table at around 150 different events. He viewed approximately 2,000 different speakers over that time and saw what they do well, and honestly, what many of them fail miserably at. He founded a company in 2003 called Speaker Fulfillment Services that works with speakers, authors, information marketers, providing product duplication and fulfillment services. He's the author of 8 books, including this one we'll talk about here in a second, and the recently released one, How to Build a Profitable Speaking Business. He's a frequent guest on podcasts, virtual summits, and live events, speaking about book publishing and information marketing. And he also has started his own podcast in the last few months. So we'll be talking about that as well. Bret, welcome to the show.
Well, Deepak, I'm excited to be with you today. Let's hopefully share some pearls of wisdom that can help your listeners out.
Absolutely. And I just want to be clear. We've had a conversation before I had my own podcast. It's on my YouTube channel. I'll link to that. So we're not going to, there'll probably be a bit of overlap, but we're going to try and come up with some new stuff for people as well. So this was a question I asked you last time we talked, but I think this is very important for the audience. How does one even fall into this line of business? You know, you don't go to school or college or whatever and think like, oh, I'm going to work the back of the room and, help speakers sell their products, et cetera. How does one even fall into this type of work?
It was certainly an unplanned path, Deepak, without a doubt. So I actually put up the first portal website in the plant engineering and maintenance industry back in 1995. So I was selling in those days manuals, training manuals and books and video tapes aimed at plant engineers and maintenance mechanics and people of that type. And around the same time, I had a joint venture with a guy named Carl Galletti, where I took over his old hard-to-find marketing book catalog and I put it up online. But because of that relationship, when Carl decided to do his first internet marketing conference in 1999, he called me up and asked me if I'd handle the back sales table for him. And I honestly didn't even, Deepak, know what backroom sales meant at the time. But I had not been to Las Vegas.
I didn't know what that meant till like a year ago.
Yeah.
Myself.
But I'd not been to Vegas before, so it sounded good to me. So I went out and agreed to do that. And that led to the side business that you mentioned, where over the course of the next 15 years, I managed a lot of events. But as a result of that, got to know a lot of the speakers in the internet and information marketing spaces very well early on. And when they found out that I was doing product fulfillment for my own websites, they asked me if I had handled product fulfillment for them. And so that led to the formation of Speaker Fulfillment Services in 2003. And because a lot of the speakers at these events were promoters in their own right, more and more people were asking us to come and handle the back of the room for them. So I would provide the crew. I would provide the merchant account that could handle a lot of money in a short period of time, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of a 3-day event or whatever. And we'd pay the speaker, we'd pay the promoter, whatever. But I fell into it because of a relationship. And, certainly I think that you may or may not agree with this, Deepak, but I think any person's greatest business asset, honestly, is the relationships that they have. It's more important than your inventory. It's more important than your building. It's more important than your website or whatever. It's relationships. And because of a relationship that I had, in essence, that's why we're talking here today.
Absolutely, Bret. I 100% agree with that. It's your network equals your net worth. That some people like to say. And I just want to clarify for people who might not know, I think most people do, but when we're talking back of sales, so if you've ever been to a conference or some sort of event and to see a speaker or a series of speakers and they're like, oh, in my book or my course or something, you can get it now at the back of them, and then everyone runs to the back of the room and fills out the form and their card. That's kind of what we're talking about, just so people.
Yeah, exactly. Now, and typically, the events I was involved with, Deepak, were in the internet and information marketing spaces. So, these would be typically 3 or 4 day long events. They have multiple speakers over the course of that time. And each speaker would get up and deliver their content for 60 or 90 minutes or whatever it was. And at the end of their presentation, they would offer continuing education. Typically, it wasn't a low-cost book. It was a higher-end coaching program or mastermind or online membership site or something. And in the speaking world where you have platform sellers like that, it's typically a 50-50 split between the event promoter and the speaker as to what they sell. So the event promoters obviously like higher ticket items being sold in the back of the room so that they're going to make more money. So, you know, they frown on you selling your $15 book in most cases. But yeah, it's about getting people motivated after you've delivered great content to then head to the back room and take you up on whatever you have to offer in terms of continuing education.
You know, Brett, that reminds me of something, and I've been to numerous of these types of events, of course, live, you know, in the past. I attend quite a bit for my own personal development. You know, it's kind of died down once I had kids, and of course, we've had COVID and blah, blah, blah. But I remember, you know, going to events where, yeah, you know, probably, and this is, let's, you know, think of it in 10 or 15 years ago dollars, right? You know, where things would be at least 1,000 or, you know, multiple thousands of dollars. But quite often you'd get the free book. That'd almost be like just attending, you get a book or be sitting on the chair as you came in the morning. But of course, that was just kind of the whet the appetite for the bigger ticket item. Is that a common strategy? Or maybe not as much anymore, but yeah.
You know, it's a fairly common strategy, Deepak. One of the things that some event promoters will do is, you know, they'll tape a buck to the bottom of each chair or whatever. And they tell people that they can go to take that dollar and go to the back sales table and exchange it for a book or whatever. And that way the thought is to stimulate, you know, buying behavior and get them used to heading to that sales table and spending money or whatever, even though you gave them the money in essence. But, you know, you still see that strategy some. But again, remember, event promoters typically want higher ticket items. And if you are a speaker, one of the things you need to give consideration to is when you're thinking about what you want to offer from the platform at the end of your talk, do you want to give them a taste of you for $15? Or do you want to give them, you know, offer something that, you know, sells for 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 or whatever, where there's money in it for you? Now, some people have used the let me give them a taste, and it's about getting as many people in the door as possible, you know, into my world. But event promoters are not going to typically want you to use that approach because, again, their money is made in the back of the room, and they're not going to make anything on a $15 book or whatever.
Got it. Got it. So what are some, you know, actually, before I get to that question, I want to hold up the book here, How to Build a Profitable Speaking Business. You know, everyone, you can see like all these flags I have there, tons of highlighting throughout the book. I went through I had a ton of questions when I read this book the first time, and we talked about this the last time we had our conversation. Again, I'll link to that before. But one thing I just want to read, one thing that really was probably the biggest thing that I got from our last conversation and from reading this book, Brett, fantastic book, people, easy read, go get it, is using, you know, content you already have, or, you know, maybe it's a video or a presentation you've done and the transcript, and that could be repurposed for a multitude of reasons, even, you know, as like an ebook or some sort of lead magnet or something like that, which I'm going to do. I just haven't done it yet, but I'm going to do it. And I got that idea from reading this book and having my conversation with Brett. So again, I just really want to highlight this, but I don't want to rehash it in our last conversation. But Brett, again, thousands of speakers, hundreds of events. What's some of the biggest mistakes you've seen speakers make?
You know, I've seen some doozies, certainly, Deepak, in my time in the back of the room. But let me tell you one story to start out with. So was managing the back sales table at an event. I think it was in Atlanta. This is going back about 10, 12 years ago or whatever. And the speaker had what every platform selling speaker dreams of, the true table rush. I mean, people were literally at the back sales table throwing their credit cards at us to order this particular speaker's product. And if I remember correctly, it was some kind of software building tool for websites or whatever. And did a slam bang job from the stage. And so they were back there ordering. And I think when all was said and done, he had sold about $375,000 worth of his product or whatever. Well, you know, you think fantastic. I would love that to happen to me. Well, what was not so fantastic is within the next 30 days, every single penny of that $375,000 had to be refunded to the people. And the reason was it was a software tool, and for whatever reason, they had some type of bug in it that they could not figure out. And again, every penny had to go back. Well, not only was it a massive embarrassment for the speaker, It was a massive pain in the butt for the event promoter because they lost out on their 50% of that $375,000 in sales. And they, had to go back and refund all the money and get the money back from the speaker because he'd already been paid out his portion or whatever. And honestly, it didn't help my pocketbook any, Deepak, because we're taking a cut of the promoter's share for handing in the back of the room. I mean, the lesson there, I think, was if you're a speaker and you're going to be selling from the stage, you better be damn sure that what you're selling is ready to go. It's debugged or whatever, or if it's a training class or whatever that you're promising a specific delivery date on. That reminds me, I was handling an event, I think it was in Vancouver after that other event, and the speaker was selling a training that was going to start in 2 weeks. Well, he did very well sales. I mean, it wasn't 375,000. I think he did 40,000 in sales or whatever. Nothing to sneeze at, certainly. Well, invariably, 2 weeks turned into 3, turned into 4, turned into 6. And again, every penny had to be refunded because he could not deliver on the timelines that he had promised the audience. So if you're selling something for that platform, make sure that you're ready to deliver it when it's promised to be delivered and that there's not any bug issues or whatever, because nobody can afford, a loss of $375,000 worth of sales. I can't. I don't know about you, Deepak.
No, I can't. I can't. I think that's a great lesson, whether you're a speaker or not, or a budding speaker, someone like myself, or just, have some deliverable, whatever it might be in your business, to your clients, to your customers, etc. It's better to under promise and over deliver than the other way around, right? So it goes to your I mean obviously the money was refunded, so that says something to the integrity, obviously, but at the same time you want to be professional and not make those kind of mistakes. And I'd assume too, all around, and I don't know how we got split evenly, but the credit card company still got their share, so they're 2.5%. So you're actually in the hole, right?
Yeah, it's costing you some money, certainly. So
yeah, absolutely. So what would you say, and again, this maybe is a question we talked about in the last one, but again, I'm going to use, for my own selfish reasons, I'm already a speaker, but I want to take that next couple rungs up the ladder in my own speaking career. But what are the most critical elements to building a successful speaking career?
Well, number one is you need to decide what kind of speaker you want to be. Do you want to be that platform selling speaker? Do you want to be a keynote speaker where you're just paid a fee to go into an association or a corporation and deliver talk? Or do you just want to use it for business building purposes? Maybe you're a chiropractor or a financial planner or whatever, and you want to speak to local organizations to spread awareness about what you want to do. So you're not directly selling from the stage, but you hope that somebody in the audience, when they have a need for whatever it is that you offer, will reach out to you because you've established yourself as the local expert. And I think everybody should be a business builder speaker. But the other two, keynote speaker, platform seller, which do you want to be? And I know some people that have mastered both worlds, but typically it's one or the other. Now, a common question that I get, Deepak, is, well, which should I be? And I will tell you that if you can master the art of selling from the platform, you will make far more money as a platform seller than you ever will as a keynote speaker. I mean, I have a colleague that in one 90-minute presentation did $995,000 worth of sales. Now, granted, it was the right audience with the right message at the right time, and he hit a true home run. I mean, he joked he would have bought one himself to get to the $1 million mark if he'd known he was going to have $995,000. Now, granted, half of that went to the event promoter, but still, for a 90-minute talk, he walked away with almost $500,000. So if you want to speak and you really want to monetize to the best of your abilities, master that art of selling from the platform. So what type of speaker do you want to be is first in my mind. Number two is you got to define your signature speech. So you got to remember that a signature speech needs to be modular in nature, because maybe you have a core component that's, say, 60 minutes or whatever. Well, if you get into a speaking engagement where you find out, hey, we're running behind schedule, can you do your talk in 45 minutes? Well, you know what you can leave out in terms of stories or interactive exercises or whatever to make it 45 minutes and make it fit. Or if you need to go longer because, hey, we're ahead of schedule for whatever reason, can you do an hour and a half or whatever? Or I've had speakers tell me that they thought they were going in to deliver a 90-minute talk, and they found out, no, you're delivering a half-day training. So they had to.
That's a difference.
They know what additional things they could add in to make that fill the time slot or whatever. So you got to define that signature speech, and it needs to be your stories. And storytelling is very important. So figure out what stories you're going to include to make your speech more memorable. And then you've got to make sure that you do your homework. So, there's three key things. How do you get on stages? How do you get on the right stages? And how do you monetize? And those are our three critical elements. But, there's a lot of great networking opportunities out there for aspiring speakers where you can get into an online group and engage with other speakers and get known and talk about what your signature talk is. And these are also attended by event promoters, so they will talk about what stages they have and what kind of speakers they're looking for. And so it's kind of like a matchmaking service, so to speak. Some of them are free, some of them are paid, and you need to decide which one is right for you. And word of caution here is you can't attend them all. Don't try to attend them all. You will just drive yourself nuts. You got to have time to actually work on your business and not just network. But networking is important, I think, about, again, establishing those relationships. Now, getting on the right stages is also critically important. I have an event we were handling several years ago where, for whatever reason, Deepak, the event promoter was all about getting as many big names as possible on a stage. So it was a 3 or 4 day event, but as it turned out, he had 3 separate speakers, all on the subject of copywriting. Now, while copywriting is a very important subject, by the time they got to that 3rd speaker on the same topic, it was like, been there, done that, heard that, and not interested in it. And that speaker's chance of selling anything from the platform was about 0. Because they'd already, if they were interested in copywriting, they'd already invested in the previous speakers. So he was not on the right stage. And obviously, it shows how critical it is to do your homework in advance of an event to determine if it's the right audience for you. Not only from the perspective of, why are they attending this event? What are their pain points? What are they wanting to learn? And how do I best serve those needs? But also, who else is going to be speaking on that platform? And what are they talking about? What are their price points or whatever? I mean, you got to look at the demographics. You got to look at who the fellow speakers are, and you got to make sure an event is a fit for you. I mean, that guy wasted his time because in the platform selling world, Deepak, you typically pay on your own nickel to go and attend the event. So you're picking up the airfare and the hotel cost and all that, and hopefully making your money on your sales from the stage. Well, if you go to the wrong event and sell 0, you just spent hundreds of dollars for nothing. And again, most of us can't afford to do that type of thing. So the right stages is critically important. And then how are you going to monetize your time on that stage? Now, maybe if you're a keynoter, you're getting paid $5 or $10 or $20,000 to come in and deliver a talk, which is great. Now, very few people start at that level, but that's where you need to get to make it, worth your while eventually. But if you're selling from the platform, what are you going to offer? Is it a membership site? Is it a mastermind program? Is it a training course, a master class, online, group coaching, one-on-one coaching or whatever? And you got to decide what's going to fit for you, but you've got to know how you're going to convert that audience into, just to say, paying members or whatever you want to call it, so that when you're selling that thing from the stage, it's worth your while to get them into your world and then, again, monetize by offer whatever that continuing ed you're going to be doing with them is. So getting on the right stages, getting on more stages that are the right stages, and learning how to monetize are all critical elements to this process.
Thank you, Brett. I want to go back to a couple of points you mentioned for the audience here. So because you dropped some golden nuggets there. So number one, again, regardless of what you do, if you're a financial advisor, chiropractor, naturopath, doctor, or you're in the online space, coaching space, whatever. And we have this audience, we have all of those type of people together. So you need to be comfortable, not only comfortable speaking, but get yourself out there, network, and do these things as a potential way of expanding your network and expanding your business. So again, this is relatable to anyone. I think the other key point, we talked a little bit about that the last time we had our conversation, was having your signature speech and having, like you mentioned, you can go up a little bit, what you can add impromptu, and then what you can chop away and what's the core. And then I have another question, but I'll save my question. I'll come back. And the other thing we talked about in our last conversation that you didn't mention, but I do, again, people go back and listen to the first conversation me and Brett had, is having that backup speech. where if, you know, the event promoter or the host or whomever says, oh, somebody dropped out or something came up, is like, could you talk about something else, to have a backup speech in your back pocket that's, you know, again, maybe maybe it's a bit shorter, but again, you can customize the length, that maybe it's a different topic, relatable, maybe not, different topic altogether, that you can like then have the second. And, you know, Brett, since we last talked, I can't remember if we talked about that in our first conversation, is I haven't written it yet, but I know what my concept is for my backup speech, my secondary speech, so that if that should ever occur to me, I'm ready, and I'm ready to jump on board and take that second spot. So
yeah, what Deepak is talking about is, and let me tell you the story. So I was standing outside a hotel in Atlanta a few years ago, and I watched a colleague of mine being carted away in the ambulance. He had some type of medical emergency. Now it turned out okay in the long run or whatever. But I could see the event promoter totally freaking out because this speaker being carted away in the ambulance was scheduled to be the next person on this platform. So he's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I mean, I have an obligation to deliver content to my audience, and I don't want to get up there and do a tap dance for 90 minutes or whatever it may be. And that's where you can be the hero to the event promoter. So as Deepak said, if you had that backup speech, now, yes, it definitely needs to be related to the reason that audience is attending that particular event. You can't, if you're a homeopathic doctor, you can't do a speech about kite flying as your backup speech or whatever. It needs to be related to the theme of the event or whatever. But that gives you one or two specific advantages. Number one, you'll be the hero in the eye of the event promoter, that you have the ability to step in and help him out. So when he's planning his next event, well, who's he likely to turn to help, to put on the platform again? You, because you helped him out. But even more importantly, it gives you more face time with that audience, more chance to build additional rapport. So if you're selling something in your other session, and I don't think you should sell in both sessions. Your backup speech, in my opinion, should be a non-selling speech or whatever. But when you get into your regular presentation and you're offering your continuing education, well, they're far more likely to buy from you because you've had more time to establish rapport and build up that relationship with the audience. They know you better, they like you better, they trust you better. And so you should do better in your backroom sales because you had that back pocket speech ready to go. And maybe you'll never need it, but if you do have it, it's nice to know that you have the ability to step in and take advantage of that opportunity should it present itself.
absolutely. So this might sound like kind of a similar question to the one I asked a little bit earlier, but what are some of the biggest mistakes that authors make? So we were talking about speakers more specifically before, now like authors. So like what would you say is the biggest mistake authors, and maybe you speak to both speakers and authors?
Sure. So, well, first of all, I think any speaker should have a book because it establishes you in the eyes of the audience as more credible. If I'm an event promoter, I'm looking at speaker A or speaker B, and speaker A has not written a book and speaker B has written the book on this subject. Well, I'm going to pick the author because he seems to be more credible, more of an expert to me because he wrote the book. So you should have a book, certainly, as a speaker. But one of the things that I think many authors are weak at, Deepak, is you need to think about the consumability, the readability of your book. And here's what I mean. I like to go into bookstores, and I typically view the marketing books. I'll go to the shelf, and if I pick up a book and that first chapter is 25 or 30 pages long, it's like, oh my God, it looks like too much work to even get through one chapter here. So I'm not going to buy that book. So in my opinion, a chapter should be no longer than 7 pages. Even shorter is fine. If you're a fiction fan and you're familiar with the author James Patterson at all, I mean, his chapters are 2 to 3 pages at the most. Which, like, well, I can read another chapter. I mean, people like to feel a sense of accomplishment, like they're making progress or whatever. And if you make it too hard for them to feel that progress because your chapters are too long, then your book is not consumable. And as a result, the chances of them coming to you for another product or service that you may have offer goes way, way down because they couldn't even get through your damn book. So think about the length of those chapters. Think about what's going to make it more reader or user friendly. So, don't have paragraphs that are this long or whatever. A paragraph should be 3 or 4 lines, and there should be a break before another paragraph. Now, I'm primarily talking the nonfiction world, obviously, how-to books, business
Right.
books, and all that stuff. But if you're selling to an audience that's, baby boomers, and don't think you're going to use 9 or 10 point type font to reduce the number of pages you have to print, because We won't be able to read it. It's too small a font. What can you do to break up the text in terms of charts or graphs or it maybe even pictures or Johnson boxes or pull quotes or whatever to again make it more reader friendly? So think about the consumability of your book, because if your book is designed to, and it should be, lead to other products or services that you may have, you got to do everything in your power to make that book consumable for the reader. Now, along the same lines, Deepak, you should have that book, make sure that you are using it as a marketing tool. You know, everybody aspires to be a New York Times bestseller, but believe me, those are few and far between. And so that book is typically the entree into your world and not the end of your world. And so you've got to have what we call bounce backs in your book that will drive them from that book to your website so that hopefully they will opt in. You should have some type of bribe, an ethical bribe on your site. It could be a PDF report, a MP3 file, whatever, that they have to enter their email address in order to receive.
Right.
So that way you can start building your own list so that when you come out with that next book, or you have other products or services that you offer, you have the ability to reach out to those people. You know, one of the big mistakes I see authors do, Deepak, is they rely entirely on Amazon for their book sales. Now, should you be selling on Amazon as an author? Absolutely. I mean, they're the 800-pound gorilla in the world. But if you have any kind of platform, whatever, you're speaking at events, on podcasts, at summits or whatever.
Should always be selling your book, right?
Well, you should be selling your book, but you need to drive that traffic to your website to get the book and not to Amazon. Because number one, if they buy it on Amazon, it's Amazon's customer and not yours. So they don't pick up the phone and say, hey, Deepak, you know, Bret Ridgway bought your book. Here's his contact information, you know, reach out to him.
Yeah.
No, it's their customer, not yours. So you don't know who bought your book. Number two, Amazon's going to take their 45 or 55% cut or whatever it is. So you're going to make a lot less money per sale than if you sold it yourself. And number three, Amazon doesn't let you stick inserts in your book. So if you have other things that you're offering to the reader, you have the ability to include a flyer, a bookmark, a postcard, a sales sheet, a catalog, whatever it may be, into your outgoing shipments if you're fulfilling or having a fulfillment house do it for you. And so if you have any kind of platform at all, you need to drive that traffic from your speaking engagements to your website to buy your book if your book is what you're offering, because that way it's your customer and you have the ability to then follow up with them accordingly. So don't rely only on Amazon. That is a massive mistake that many authors make.
Yeah, you brought up two really good points, Brett, I want to touch on. So number one, again, just myself, you know, there's certain times of the year, usually the summer, when I have a little bit more downtime, or, you know, sitting at the lake, where I'll sit and read for an hour or something like that. Then it's a little bit different. But for the most part, and I read every day, you know, I at least 2 to 3 times in small chunks, I read throughout the day, here and there, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there type of thing. I appreciate, you know, and Brett's book is a perfect example of that. Like Brett mentioned, where there's short chapters or there's nice net logical breaks. I don't use a bookmark. I usually use flags, as you can see, and then I flag things that are important I want to come back to. But I like it when there's something I can read, you know, either short chapter or a section where it's a logical break. Again, maybe it's a chart, maybe it's a quote, and I can put my flag and know where I'm picking up. I don't like these long things. It's like, where am I supposed to stop? Yeah, I can put my flag anywhere, but I want it like a thought, the author's thought or their main point to be complete, or mostly complete, when I come back to it, not in the middle of a paragraph or what have you. So that's number one. So I appreciate that. I like that myself. And then the second thing is that what I'm seeing a lot of people I follow, even some friends that I have that have written books, is they tend to, I think exactly what you said, in the first X period that the book is available, maybe it's the first month, maybe it's the first 3 months, is all only at their website. And then after they got some, and of course, the bigger platform you have, the more sales, more speaking opportunities, podcasts, whatever, the more sales you get directly from your own website. And then at some point, and I know what that cutoff point is, I'd love to hear your thought, then it's available widely, Amazon, etc. Like, what is that kind of what you're seeing in the industry?
Yeah, for timing reasons, my book is available only on my website until this fall. So it came out a couple months ago or so, and any traffic that I'm driving on the book goes to my website. It is in September, October that it's coming out on Amazon, where we'll do the bigger push through, you know, college and all that to try to make it an Amazon #1 bestseller. but the timing, that just made sense for what I was working on to do Amazon in the fall. So I think it's fairly common, Deepak, but I only have my own experience to speak from in that particular arena. So
Yeah, I'm seeing it like the people I follow, some influencers and some of my mentors. That's what they seem to be doing, or it's, I guess maybe in conjunction, because some people just, you know, they have their Amazon gift card or whatever, but they're certainly not talking about Amazon on their podcast interviews or what have you, type of thing.
one of the things you can do is offer, author signed copies to buy, getting it from you as an extra incentive to the reader.
Yeah, or some other bonus, or even, like, again, we didn't talk about this, but pre-sale, right? Where it's like it's coming out here, whether they're selling through Amazon or their own website, and you get a bonus if you pre-sell and you get some money up front, type of thing, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So Brett, I got a couple of questions I want to ask you as we wrap up the interview here. But what are you working on now? I know there was some stuff you were working on the last time we had our conversation. Again, I'll link to that interview. But what's upcoming for you? What can people expect from you coming up here in the future?
Sure. So, as we talked about earlier, Deepak, I formed that company called Speaker Fulfillment Services in 2003. And I was happy being the backroom guy. That was kind of my shtick or whatever. But eventually I decided that I did need to get up in front of the room myself and start speaking. So about 10 years ago, I started doing some speaking, but it was always on behalf of the fulfillment company. So I was a content provider speaker primarily. So I was a buffer between the people platform selling, where I would just deliver 30 or 60 minutes of content only. Well, again, that was always on behalf of the company. So it was designed to make people aware of the fulfillment company, and then hopefully they would have a need for the fulfillment company service. So in essence, it was business building speaking that we talked about earlier. Well, within the last year, I decided to formally part ways from the fulfillment company and brand Bret Ridgway for the first time. So my current focus is on helping aspiring speakers learn how to really start their speaking career. How do they define what their signature talk should be? How do they, again, find out what those stages, how do they get on stages? How do they determine if they're the right stages? What's the best approach to monetizing their time on stage? And so I actually am putting together a 2-day workshop. It'll be 2 or 2.5 days, and it'll be fairly intensive, kind of a boot camp type thing on starting your speaking career and covering the things that people need to get going and starting to put into place if they truly want to build a speaking career. Now, you may want a speaking business, and that's kind of the next level, so to speak. But, what are the basic starter steps to building a speaking career? So that's the current focus. And as you mentioned earlier, I have my own podcast. I started a podcast a few months ago, and I started a LinkedIn newsletter. And it's all about, establishing my credibility in the industry and all that. And then once I built my list and followers up to what I think is a suitable level, then we'll start to formally offer the workshop to those folks. So
okay, awesome. Well, we'll definitely put the link in the show notes to Brett's workshop when this episode gets released here. So Bret, again, this podcast is not about health per se, but that is my main focus. So just a couple quick questions. What does do you have a morning routine, or what does your health sort of routine in the day look like for you?
Well, it's hit and miss, honestly, Deepak. There's a lot of room for improvement there. Now, I actually had to walk 2 miles to work today because the transmission in my truck blew up on Friday. So I got a good 2-mile walk in this morning, and that should be more of a habit. I mean, my wife and I actually took a trip in the fall to the Holy Land, and so I was doing a lot of walking before then, and I need to get back into that routine. But it's eating healthier. I'm 64 now, I'll be 65 soon. So I need to be cognizant of all those things that you teach people and get a better routine in place. I'm at the, I don't know what they call it, the pre-diabetes level or whatever. So there's certain things I need to watch and diets, things I need to follow. So I'm not as disciplined as you, I am sure, Deepak, but working in the right direction.
All right. Well, it's a good thing we're in each other's network, right? We can lean on each other for our own zones of genius. So one last question, then, kind of in the same vein, is, what do you wish, as from a health point of view, or health optimization point of view, what do you wish you would, have started earlier, or what advice would you give to your younger self?
Well, I was actually a runner competitively in my earlier years, Deepak. I ran competitively through college. So,
What was your discipline? What was your discipline?
I ran cross country and I ran the half and the mile and all that. So,
Okay.
compared to the average guy on the street, I was a good runner. Compared to elite college runners and stuff, I was crap. I think I ran about like a 4:12, 4:13 mile in my younger days or whatever. But so I was in good fitness and all that. And certainly some of that helped long term in terms of maintaining health or whatever. And every once in a while, I actually have delusions of grandeur, getting back into it and running some 5Ks and stuff and all that. But after about 4 days, my calves go and tighten up, and it's like, yeah, I'll just walk or whatever. So I mean, I do need to get back into a regular walk routine and all that. So ask your question again, Deepak. I want to make sure I
just okay, so kind of you could answer it either way. Like, what do you wish you would have started earlier as far as health, or what would you tell your younger self regarding health?
Well, I would just tell myself to maintain what I was doing in my earlier years. And now maybe it's walking now versus running because I wore my legs out or whatever, my knees out. But it's just having that discipline to do the things that that you should do. And so, the words to myself, Deepak, are get it in gear, Brett.
Get it in gear. I love it. I love it. Maybe that'll be the title of this podcast. Maybe we'll see. We'll figure it out. So, Brett, I just want to mention you do have a gift for the listeners. It's a free report. The three key things entrepreneurs must master to build a profitable speaking business, and we'll have the link for that in the show notes here. Are there any last words of advice or golden nuggets you want to leave the audience with? And you've certainly dropped a lot already.
Yeah, one of the things I always think about, Deepak, and I should have been doing what I'm doing now 10 years ago, but not having the courage to step out there on my own or whatever. I did, for whatever reason, I didn't have the gumption or courage to do it. And so, I mean, if you think you have a message that needs to be shared with the world, step up and do the things that are necessary to help you spread that message. So have the courage to step out there. Along the same lines, Deepak, I would encourage people that follow those that have trod that path before you. So you can struggle along as you're trying to build a business and try to do it yourself, and you probably will never get it done. So find a mentor who's been down that path before and invest in yourself by investing in that mentor to help you show the way so that you get there quicker. You will spend far more money and time trying to do everything yourself than if you found somebody who's done it before and follow their guide.
Absolutely. I love that, Brett. And I've shared this before in interviews and et cetera, it wasn't until I got out of my own stubbornness and asked for help, and you got to find the right person. Don't get me wrong. And it took me to my third sort of coach mentor to sort of find the right person. But it wasn't until I found, asked for help, found the right help that, my game started up leveling as an entrepreneur and in my business. So yeah, you can't do it on your own. Don't be stubborn that way. So that's a great message. Yeah, Brett, I really appreciate you being on the podcast, our second conversation, but first time on the podcast. Really appreciate your time today. We're going to put all the links in for Brett, how you can contact him, how you can get the free guide, and his masterclass workshop when it's coming out. So again, thank you, Brett. I really appreciate it here. I'm going to throw it back to Jxxiii to guide us out. Thanks for listening to the Deepak Saini Show. Remember, exceptional results for the exceptional you. Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Podcast produced by the Minted Green Company,